The lecture hall at Hawthorne University went dead silent as Professor Nolan's private text message filled the giant projection screen behind him. "Can't stop thinking about last night, Theo. Love you more than words." It read, signed with a heart emoji from the man who'd been his secret for 5 years. Nolan froze, his heart slamming against his ribs like a trapped bird. 1 second he had been discussing moral courage in modern society, clicking through slides on his laptop, and the next his personal life was broadcast to 200 undergraduates in vivid color. He lunged for the cable connecting his phone to the projector, yanking it free with shaking hands. The screen went black, but the damage was done. Gasps rippled through the room, followed by whispers that grew into a low roar. A few students exchanged wide-eyed glances. One girl in the front row covered her mouth, while a guy in the back pulled out his phone, already recording. Nolan's face burned. For 15 years, he had built a wall around his truth, playing the role of the dedicated, slightly mysterious professor who kept his private life private. Now that wall lay in ruins. "Class dismissed," he managed to say, his voice hoarse. Students filed out slowly, many casting backward glances. Nolan gathered his notes with mechanical movements, avoiding eye contact. His mind raced. Who had seen? How fast would it spread? Hawthorne was a progressive campus in California, but even here, a tenured professor's reputation could crumble under the weight of scandal. And this wasn't just any secret. It was the one that could cost him everything: his career, his family's respect, his fragile sense of peace. Outside, the California sun felt too bright, mocking his panic. Nolan walked quickly across the quad toward his office, head down. His phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts from colleagues, missed calls from the department chair. One message stood out, from Theodore. "Saw what happened online. I'm coming over." Nolan's chest tightened. Theodore, with his warm brown eyes and steady presence, had been his anchor for half a decade. They met at a quiet book reading in San Francisco 5 years ago, two men both tired of hiding their true selves from the world. Theodore worked as an architect, designing sustainable homes that reflected his belief in building strong foundations, both literal and emotional. By the time Nolan reached his office, the campus gossip mill was in full swing. He could see students huddled in groups, phones out. A viral clip was already circulating. Someone had recorded the moment the message appeared. "Professor Nolan's gay texts exposed in class," one tweet read. His stomach churned. He locked the door and sank into his chair, head in hands. The fear was visceral, a cold wave that made his hands tremble. What would his parents say? They still lived in rural Texas, clinging to traditional values, believing their son was the successful academic who'd just never found the right woman after his brief early marriage that ended amicably. His sister had hinted at setting him up on dates for years. A soft knock startled him. It was Dr. Elena Vargas, his closest colleague in the ethics department. She slipped inside, her expression a mix of concern and something else. "Pity? Nolan, the dean wants to see you tomorrow. Students are talking. Some are supportive, others not so much. You don't have to say anything, but if you need to talk." She trailed off. Nolan nodded numbly. Elena had always been a friend, or so he thought. He didn't know who to trust anymore. That evening, Theodore arrived at Nolan's apartment with takeout Thai food and a calm demeanor that Nolan envied. They sat on the couch, the city lights of San Francisco twinkling through the window. "It was an accident," Nolan said, staring at his untouched plate. The Bluetooth connected automatically. "I forgot to disconnect after checking emails." Theodore reached for his hand. "I know, but maybe this is the push you needed. You've been carrying this weight alone for too long." Nolan pulled away gently. "It's not that simple, Theo. My job, my family. I could lose tenure. The board is conservative on these issues despite what the campus says." The conversation that followed was quiet but intense. Theodore wanted openness. Nolan feared the consequences. As night fell, Nolan lay awake, the viral video gaining thousands of views. Comments ranged from cruel jokes to messages of support from anonymous students. One stood out. Professor Nolan always talked about living authentically in his lectures. Now we see what that really costs. The words stung because they were true. He had built his lectures around honesty, yet lived a lie himself for so long. The next morning, the local news picked it up. Hawthorne professor's private life goes public. Nolan's inbox overflowed with interview requests and hate mail mixed with encouragement. Walking to the dean's office felt like running a gauntlet. Students whispered as he passed. Some offered small smiles of encouragement that gave him a sliver of hope. In the meeting, the dean was professional but firm. "We support our faculty, Nolan, but we need to manage this." Perhaps a statement or an open forum? Nolan left feeling exposed, raw, and more alone than ever despite the support. Back in his apartment, Theodore waited with fresh coffee and quiet understanding. "Whatever happens, I'm here for the long haul." But Nolan wondered if love was enough when the world seemed determined to tear them apart. The first misunderstanding began when a student posted online that Theodore was a former student, twisting innocent facts into something inappropriate. It wasn't true, but the lie spread like wildfire, threatening both their reputations and forcing Nolan to confront how deeply his choices affected the man he loved. Nolan knew he had to do something drastic. He couldn't hide anymore. That afternoon, he drafted notes for a special lecture series on authenticity and identity. The decision terrified him to his core, but staying silent felt like a slow death. As he saved the file on his laptop, his phone lit up with another message from Theodore. "Proud of you, no matter what you decide." For the first time in days, Nolan felt a small spark of hope amid the growing chaos. But he sensed the real storms were only just beginning as the gossip intensified and old secrets threatened to surface. He spent the rest of the evening revising his notes, pouring every ounce of his suppressed pain into the words he would speak. The lecture would be his stand, his way of reclaiming the narrative that had been ripped from his hands. Little did he know how far the ripples would reach. The days blurred into a haze of avoidance and anxious waiting. Nolan arrived early to the auditorium for his rescheduled lecture on identity and courage in American history, the one he had transformed overnight into a raw exploration of hidden lives and societal judgment. Theodore had offered to come for moral support, but Nolan insisted on facing it alone at first. "I need to own this," he told him over breakfast, his voice steadier than he felt. The hall filled quickly, word having spread that something big was happening. Students who normally skipped sat shoulder to shoulder, phones ready. Nolan stood at the podium, heart pounding, and began without the usual slide deck. "Last week, my personal life became public in the most humiliating way possible. Some of you laughed. Others judged. Today, I want to talk about why that happens and what it costs all of us." He spoke of historical figures who loved in secret, of laws that once criminalized affection between men, of the quiet strength required to simply exist. His voice cracked once when he described the loneliness of living half a life, but he pushed on. The room was pin-drop silent. When he finished 40 minutes later, the applause started slow, then swelled into a standing ovation from half the audience. Unbeknownst to Nolan, the entire session had been recorded by multiple students and uploaded within minutes. By evening, the video had exploded online. Millions of views poured in. Hashtags like Professor Nolan Speaks and Authentic Love trended nationally. Support poured from unexpected places: LGBTQ organizations, alumni, even celebrities sharing clips with messages of solidarity. But the backlash hit just as hard. Conservative news outlets ran segments calling him an activist in disguise. His department received dozens of complaint emails. His parents called that night, their voices tight with disappointment. "We raised you better than this, son. What about the family name?" Nolan hung up feeling gutted, the weight of generational expectations crushing his chest. Theodore found him on the balcony later, staring at the city skyline. "You were incredible today. The world saw the real you." Nolan turned, eyes wet. "The world saw, but my own family can't. And now there's this rumor about you being inappropriate. It's not fair to drag you into my mess." Theodore stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's our mess, Nolan. I chose this life with you because I love who you are, not some version you hide." Their conversation stretched late into the night, revealing cracks Nolan hadn't noticed before. Theodore admitted feeling sidelined for years, always the secret partner never introduced at faculty events. Nolan defended his caution as protection, but the words rang hollow even to him. The misunderstanding deepened when a jealous colleague, Dr. Marcus Hale leaked an old photo of them at a private dinner to the campus paper, captioning it with insinuations about favoritism. The article went live the next morning, and suddenly Nolan's inbox filled with demands for his resignation. Theodore saw the piece first and confronted Nolan over lunch. "Did you know about this photo? Why didn't you warn me?" The hurt in his voice cut deep. Nolan had forgotten the picture existed, taken years ago during a moment of rare openness. He tried to explain, but the damage was done, another layer of betrayal from someone he trusted. That afternoon, Nolan met with the dean again, this time with union representation. The atmosphere was tense. "We're standing by you for now, but the board wants a formal review. This viral support is helping, but the complaints are mounting." Nolan left the meeting determined to fight, but the psychological toll was mounting. He began questioning every decision that led to this point, why he had waited so long, why he had pushed Theodore into the shadows. That evening, a group of supportive students organized a small vigil on the quad, holding signs that read, "Love is courage," and "We stand with Professor Nolan." He watched from his office window, touched yet overwhelmed. Theodore joined him there, and for the first time in days they shared a quiet embrace, the kind that reminded Nolan why he had fallen in love. Yet the rifts were widening. His sister texted a long message urging him to apologize publicly and fix this before it destroys Mom and Dad. The pressure from home clashed with the growing online movement cheering his lecture. Nolan realized he stood at a crossroads, retreat into safety or push forward into the unknown. He chose the latter, scheduling a follow-up open forum for the following week. As he prepared his notes, a new wave of hate mail arrived, but so did dozens of emails from young gay men across the country, saying his words gave them hope. The duality of it all left him exhausted but strangely empowered. Theodore sensed the shift and offered to help organize the event, bridging the gap that the misunderstanding had created. "We're in this together now," he said, and for the first time Nolan truly believed it. The coming days would test that belief in ways neither man could anticipate, as family secrets surfaced and loyalties fractured under the spotlight. The open forum drew a packed auditorium, cameras from local stations lining the back wall. Nolan arrived early, Theodore by his side for the first time publicly. The gesture sent a clear message, and murmurs rippled through the crowd as they took seats near the front. When Nolan stepped to the microphone, the room hushed. "Thank you for coming. Today isn't about defending my job. It's about defending the right to live honestly." He shared stories of students who had confided in him over the years, of the pain caused by silence, of the joy found in acceptance. Theodore spoke briefly too, his architect's calm voice describing how love built lasting structures when given space to grow. The audience responded with questions that ranged from supportive to challenging, but the overall tone was respectful. By the end, even some skeptics nodded in understanding. The event trended again, amplifying the viral lecture's reach. Donations poured into campus LGBTQ support funds, and Nolan received invitations to speak at national conferences. Yet the victory felt fragile. His parents booked a flight to California without warning, arriving 2 days later with suitcases and expectations. The dinner at Nolan's apartment was strained from the start. His mother hugged him tightly, whispering, "We just want what's best for you." His father avoided eye contact, focusing on small talk about the weather. Theodore cooked a simple meal, trying to bridge the gap with stories of his work, but the tension thickened when the topic turned personal. "This lifestyle," his father said finally, "it goes against everything we taught you. Think of your career, your future." Nolan felt the old shame rise, but he met his father's gaze. "This is who I am, Dad. Hiding nearly destroyed me. Theodore isn't a phase, he's my partner." The words hung heavy. His mother cried quietly while his father pushed back his chair and left the table. The evening ended in awkward goodbyes, leaving Nolan drained. Theodore held him afterward without words, understanding the depth of the sacrifice. The family rift widened the next morning when his sister called, accusing him of selfishness and demanding he apologize to their parents. "You're tearing us apart, Nolan. Is this worth it?" The question echoed in his mind as he prepared for class. At the university, support continued to grow. Elena organized a faculty letter of solidarity, signed by most of the department except Marcus, whose jealousy had turned into open hostility. Nolan confronted him in the hallway one afternoon. "Why leak that photo, Marcus? What did I ever do to you?" Marcus smirked. "You got the tenure track everyone wanted. Some of us play by the rules." The betrayal stung, revealing how fragile professional friendships could be under pressure. Nolan walked away, deciding not to escalate, but feeling the loss of another ally. That night, Theodore suggested a weekend getaway to clear their heads. They drove up the coast to a quiet cabin, the ocean waves providing a soothing backdrop. There, away from the noise, they talked openly for hours. Nolan admitted his fear of losing his family had kept him closeted longer than necessary. Theodore shared his own past struggles with acceptance from his conservative relatives back east. The honesty strengthened their bond, turning misunderstanding into deeper commitment. But reality intruded with a call from the dean. The board had scheduled a formal hearing in 2 weeks. "Bring your best case, Nolan. The viral support is helping, but we need to show this won't disrupt campus." Back in the city, Nolan threw himself into preparation, gathering testimonials from students and colleagues. Theodore stood beside him through late nights, offering quiet encouragement and helping draft statements. The psychological strain showed in sleepless nights and moments of doubt, but each time Nolan wavered, he remembered the young faces in his classes who looked to him for courage. A surprise visit from a former student, now an activist, reminded him of the impact. "Your lecture changed how I see myself," the young man said. "Don't back down." The words fueled him. As the hearing date approached, his parents called again, this time with a softer tone. His mother admitted watching the forum video online. "We don't understand everything, but we see how much this means to you." It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a crack in the wall. Nolan clung to that hope while preparing his defense. The night before the hearing, he and Theodore shared a quiet dinner, reflecting on the journey from that shocking text exposure to this moment of potential vindication. "No matter what happens tomorrow," Theodore said, "you've already won by standing up." Nolan nodded, feeling the weight of growth in every decision that had led here. The next morning, he walked into the boardroom with Theodore's hand briefly squeezing his before they entered. The room was full, cameras rolling, the stakes higher than ever. As he began his statement, the words flowed with newfound clarity, each sentence a step toward the man he was meant to be. The hearing room felt smaller than it was, every eye fixed on Nolan as he delivered his prepared remarks. He spoke of academic freedom, of the importance of authenticity in teaching, of how his personal truth enhanced rather than hindered his ability to inspire students. Testimonials read aloud painted a picture of a dedicated educator whose lecture had sparked meaningful conversations on campus. The board members listened intently, some nodding. When questions came, Nolan answered with calm honesty, even when pressed on the viral nature of the incident. Theodore waited outside, pacing the hallway until Nolan emerged 3 hours later, exhausted but relieved. "They didn't fire me. They're issuing a formal statement of support and recommending sensitivity training for the campus." The news spread quickly, boosting the positive narrative online. Celebrities and influencers amplified the story, turning Nolan into an unlikely symbol of courage. Yet the victory came with new challenges. Marcus resigned quietly after the board investigated his leak, but the damage to trust lingered. Nolan's family dynamics shifted gradually. His father sent a short email acknowledging the hearing outcome, ending with, "We're trying to understand." It was progress, small but meaningful. Theodore suggested they host a small gathering at their apartment to celebrate, inviting close friends and supportive colleagues. The evening was warm, filled with laughter and toasts, but Nolan noticed Elena's absence and learned she had taken a leave after struggling with her own role in the early gossip. The revelation brought another layer of reflection on how secrets and misunderstandings could fracture even the strongest ties. As weeks passed, Nolan returned to teaching with renewed energy. His classes filled with students eager to engage, and he incorporated more discussions on identity without fear. One afternoon, a young man approached after lecture, sharing his own coming-out story and crediting Nolan's example. Moments like these reminded him of the ripple effects of his decisions. Theodore's work flourished too, landing a major project designing an LGBTQ community center downtown. They celebrated the win together, the shared success strengthening their partnership. But the past wasn't fully behind them. A conservative alumni group filed a formal complaint, demanding a review of Nolan's tenure. The threat loomed, forcing another round of meetings and statements. Nolan sacrificed personal time, missing dates and quiet evenings to prepare defenses. Theodore understood but felt the strain, leading to a brief argument one evening. "I support you completely, but sometimes it feels like the fight consumes everything." Nolan listened, recognizing the pattern of prioritizing image over presence. They reconciled with honest promises to balance the battle with their life together. The turning point came during a campus town hall where Nolan was invited to speak again. Facing a mixed crowd, he addressed the complaints head-on. "Change is uncomfortable, but hiding who we are costs more than any controversy." The speech, once again recorded, reignited the viral wave, this time with even broader reach. Petitions from students and alumni flooded the administration in his favor. His parents watched the live stream from Texas, later calling to say they were proud of his strength even if they still wrestled with their beliefs. The acknowledgement brought tears to Nolan's eyes, a healing he hadn't expected. As summer approached, the board dismissed the complaint, citing overwhelming community support. Nolan felt the weight lift, but the experience had changed him irrevocably. He proposed a new course on LGBTQ history in America, which the department approved enthusiastically. Theodore stood beside him at the announcement event, their relationship now open and celebrated. Yet growth demanded more. Nolan reached out to Elena, offering reconciliation and understanding for her earlier hesitation. Their conversation was raw but restorative, proving friendships could survive rifts when met with empathy. Family visits followed, tentative but genuine. His sister brought her kids, and for the first time conversations flowed without tension. Nolan reflected often on the journey, the initial shock, the viral lecture that flipped the script, the betrayals and sacrifices that tested every bond. Each step had forced him to confront his fears, to choose courage over comfort. Theodore noticed the change, the way Nolan now walked taller, spoke freer. One evening on their balcony, he said, "You've become the man I always knew you could be." Nolan pulled him close, grateful for the partner who had walked every difficult mile. The future stretched ahead with promise, new opportunities arising from the very exposure that once threatened to destroy him. As the academic year ended, Nolan stood before his final class, looking at faces that had witnessed his transformation. "Remember, living truthfully isn't always easy, but it's the only way to truly live." The applause that followed carried a deeper meaning, a validation of every hard choice. In quiet moments, he wondered how one accidental text had led to such profound change, but he knew the answer lay in the decisions that followed, the willingness to face consequences and grow from them. The community that rallied around him proved acceptance wasn't given. It was earned through visibility and resilience. With Theodore's hand in his, Nolan stepped into this new chapter, heart open and future bright. Summer brought a welcome pause, allowing Nolan and Theodore to travel to a small coastal town in Oregon for 2 weeks of uninterrupted time together. The ocean air cleared the lingering stress, and they spent days hiking, talking, and simply being. Nolan opened up about the psychological scars from years of hiding, how each family conversation had chipped away at his confidence until the viral moment forced a reckoning. Theodore shared stories from his own youth, coming out in college and facing similar pressures. Their bond deepened through these honest exchanges, transforming past misunderstandings into shared strength. Back in San Francisco, Nolan dove into developing his new course, collaborating with student groups to ensure it reflected real experiences. Theodore's community center project advanced, and he invited Nolan to the groundbreaking ceremony. Standing together publicly felt natural now, a far cry from the secrecy that once defined them. Yet echoes of the past surfaced when an old friend from Texas reached out, expressing regret for past judgment and asking to reconnect. Nolan agreed to a video call, navigating the conversation with newfound grace. The interaction highlighted his growth, forgiveness without forgetting the lessons. As fall semester began, enrollment in Nolan's identity course skyrocketed. The first day, the room buzzed with anticipation. He started by sharing a brief update on his journey, emphasizing how actions and decisions shape destiny more than initial shocks. Students engaged deeply, sharing their own stories in ways that enriched every session. Elena returned from leave, and their friendship mended over coffee meetings where they discussed the importance of allyship during crises. Marcus's departure had left a void, but it also created space for new colleagues who aligned with Nolan's values. The university hosted a panel on acceptance, featuring Nolan and several students. During the event, a question from the audience probed the cost of visibility. Nolan answered thoughtfully, "The sacrifice is real, but so is the freedom on the other side." Theodore watched proudly from the front row, their eyes meeting in a moment of quiet connection that spoke volumes. Family progress continued with a planned visit for Thanksgiving. His parents arrived with less tension, bringing homemade pies and tentative questions about Theodore's work. Conversations around the table included laughter and stories, a stark contrast to the painful dinner months earlier. Nolan's sister joined via video, her support evident. The holiday marked a milestone, proving that persistence and honest dialogue could bridge even deep divides. Yet challenges persisted. A national conservative group targeted the university's curriculum, citing Nolan's course as controversial. Media interviews followed, and Nolan handled them with composure, focusing on education over confrontation. The psychological resilience he had built served him well, each decision reinforcing his sense of self. Theodore stood as his steady partner, offering perspective during stressful preparations. One evening after a particularly intense interview, they discussed the future openly. "I want us to build a life where we don't have to prove anything anymore," Nolan said. Theodore smiled. "We're already doing that, one day at a time." Their relationship, tested by betrayal and external pressures, emerged stronger, a testament to mutual sacrifice and understanding. As winter approached, Nolan received an award from a national LGBTQ Educators Association for his courage and innovation in teaching. The ceremony in Chicago brought them back to where the journey had roots, allowing reflection on how far they had come. Accepting the honor, Nolan thanked Theodore publicly, the words carrying the weight of shared battles. The audience's applause echoed the community support that had sustained them. Returning home, they faced one final hurdle when an anonymous complaint resurfaced old rumors. Nolan chose transparency, addressing it in a department meeting and sharing how such tactics had once nearly broken him. The collective response from colleagues affirmed his place, closing the chapter on doubt. Through it all, Nolan's internal transformation stood out. He no longer measured his worth by others' approval, but by his own integrity. The man who once panicked over exposed texts now led discussions on authenticity with confidence. Theodore noticed the change in quiet ways, easier smiles, deeper conversations, a sense of peace. Their love had evolved from secret passion to public partnership, enriched by every trial. The holiday season brought another family gathering, this time including Theodore's parents who had flown in for reconciliation of their own. The blended dinner table symbolized the broader acceptance both men had fought for. As the year ended, Nolan stood on the balcony of their apartment, looking over the city lights. Theodore joined him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "We've come a long way from that lecture hall moment." Nolan nodded, reflecting on the chain of events, the shocking exposure, the viral turning point, the betrayals that tested loyalties, the sacrifices that demanded growth. Each element had shaped him into someone capable of true connection. The future held more lectures, more advocacy, but also space for the life they deserved. With the community behind them and families slowly embracing their truth, Nolan felt ready for whatever came next. The journey had taught him that acceptance started within and radiated outward when courage met compassion. New opportunities emerged in the new year as Nolan was invited to guest lecture at universities across the country. He and Theodore traveled together when possible, turning professional trips into shared adventures that strengthened their partnership. In Boston, during a panel on modern relationships, Nolan spoke about the power of vulnerability in the face of societal judgment. The audience, a mix of academics and students, responded with thoughtful questions that mirrored his own past struggles. Back home, the campus felt like a second family, with students stopping him in the halls to share how his story had inspired their own paths. Elena became a close confidant again, co-authoring an article on ethical teaching in diverse classrooms. The piece gained traction in academic journals, further solidifying Nolan's reputation. Family ties continued to heal through regular calls and visits. His father even attended a virtual lecture, afterward sending a message that simply said, "Well done, son." The simple words carried years of unspoken acceptance. Theodore's community center opened to great fanfare, and Nolan delivered the keynote address, weaving personal anecdotes with broader themes of building inclusive spaces. The event drew media coverage that highlighted their joint journey without sensationalism. As spring arrived, Nolan reflected on the full arc, from the humiliating text exposure to national recognition. The psychological growth was evident in how he now navigated criticism with grace and celebrated wins with humility. A final misunderstanding arose when an old colleague resurfaced with claims of favoritism in grading, but Nolan addressed it directly, with documentation and transparency, resolving the issue swiftly. The incident served as a reminder that vigilance remained necessary, yet his foundation was now unshakable. Theodore proposed a quiet commitment ceremony in their favorite coastal spot that summer, surrounded by close friends and family who had witnessed the transformation. The simple event under the sunset symbolized the culmination of their shared sacrifices and decisions. Vows exchanged focused on continued growth, mutual support, and facing life's challenges together. Nolan's parents attended, their presence a powerful affirmation of progress. As the ceremony concluded, applause mixed with tears of joy, the community that had rallied around them celebrating the love that had endured. In the months that followed, Nolan expanded his advocacy, mentoring young educators and contributing to policy discussions on inclusive education. Theodore's work flourished with new commissions, their lives intertwined in meaningful ways. The once divided family now gathered for holidays without tension, conversations flowing freely about life, love, and the future. Nolan often thought back to that pivotal lecture, the one born from crisis that sparked nationwide support and personal liberation. Every action since, the confrontations, the apologies, the bold choices, had led to this place of peace. He had learned that true strength emerged not from perfection, but from the courage to face consequences and evolve. One evening, as they sat on their balcony watching the city lights, Theodore turned to him. Looking back, would you change how it started? Nolan smiled, shaking his head. No. It forced me to become who I am. Their hands intertwined, the future bright with possibility. The journey had been marked by heartbreak and triumph, misunderstandings and reconciliations, but above all, by the unwavering decision to live authentically. As seasons changed and new challenges inevitably arose, Nolan faced them with the wisdom earned through fire. The support that began with a viral moment had become a lasting movement, inspiring countless others to embrace their truth. In quiet moments, he wondered at the power of one honest step forward. The man who once feared exposure now stood as a beacon, proving that acceptance and love could triumph when met with resilience and heart. Their story continued, a testament to the human capacity for growth amid adversity. True or false? Hiding your true self forever protects those you love more than living openly ever could?